Hey there, welcome to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. So as we walk through the election process, a lot of people are trying to make the case that Biden needs to step down. A lot of people are making the case that Biden needs to stay. A lot of people are trying to learn the lessons of, I can't believe he lied to us. Well, look, it's a politician. Politicians on both sides of the aisle lie constantly. It's pretty much in their job description. So you shouldn't be upset that Biden misrepresented himself to be more astute and mentally sharp than we learned on last Thursday. For me, the real takeaway from this is what a poor job the media did over the last 4 or 5 years covering this situation. And for them to act surprised, like, oh my goodness, like they just found out last Thursday this guy has lost a step. I don't believe it. I don't think you should either. Let's ask my next guest, Dan Snell. He's author of a couple books, The Winsome Candidate and The Winsome Way. Welcome back to the James Show, Dan. What do you think about that? I think the real scandal of Senility Gate is the media.
Well, you're right there, James, and it's great to be with you, and happy 4th of July to all your listeners and you. The media, traditionally, and I kind of watch media all the way from the far left to the far right and in the middle, and I certainly enjoy commentators and hosts like you because I think you use common sense and tell it like it is compared to some of the spin we get on the left or the right. But they have treated, let's just say this, they've treated President Biden more than fairly. I'm being kind. And part of that could be, and it's kind of an interesting parallel or dichotomy that Donald Trump gets treated unfairly because he does take such shots at the media. And I think where Biden has tried to always be a president that worked with the media, so maybe that's why they were kinder to him. But it's glaring now. It is out there, and the flip-flops that's going on in the last 72 hours, it's time for a change, almost like a pitcher on the mound when the manager comes out and thinking about, should I replace him? The next hitter, it's a home run off the guy he left in. It's time to go to the bullpen.
Right, but I still don't buy the idea that they're just figuring this out, like they're just learning this. They're only having to say this because they got exposed. And even if they, and I use, the ubiquitous ethereal concept of they forever, how vague it is, but I use they claim they didn't know. They claim that they didn't see it. However, other people in the media, shows like mine and platforms like Fox News or Rush Limbaugh when he was still around, were constantly pointing out over the last 5 years how this guy looks and sounds different in a way that speaks of mental decline. We were called ugly names. We were argued against. We were shot down. So to act like that they're surprised that this happened, I'm not buying it for 1 second, Dan.
Yeah, there should be no surprise. And, of course, we've seen there's been side-by-side comparisons of presidents over the decades of their first year and their last year, how different they've changed in their appearance. But in this case, and quite frankly, it is because of the age, the season of life, the downward fall or stumbles are happening bigger and are more noticeable. And they did help the White House hide that, and it is disappointing. But now they've got to do, that interview tomorrow with George Stephanopoulos on ABC is going to be a big, huge interview that, just like the debate, a lot of people will be watching.
Yeah, I only saw that headline. Is there something more we need to know about that? Biden's going to do an interview with George Stephanopoulos. Is this going to be broadcast live, or is this going to be recorded, edited, and played later? What are the details behind that?
Well, what I've heard is that it's going to be an unedited interview, other than maybe for some commercials, and it's not going to be, it will have been pre-recorded, but that they are not going to edit. They are going to supply at least the transcript completely unredacted and unchanged to anyone who wants it. So I think George Stephanopoulos, he'll ask some tough questions, though. He'll try to be respectful, but he'll ask tough questions, and we'll see how Biden answer those. And who knows, it could be the defining moment where we get the tip that after all these days of flip-flopping, quite frankly, from the White House and the president, that he may, who knows, I don't think he would choose ABC exclusively to make an announcement, but It's time for him to do the fireside chat.
Listen,
to do the fireside chat.
Yeah, he's going into a platform that is pro Biden with George Stephanopoulos, who is the spokesman for the Clinton campaign, both the campaign and the Clinton White House. He was their spokesman back in the 90s. So it's not like this is a disinterested third party. This is a guy that's clearly on his side and clearly friendly territory. The only thing I saw about it, I didn't even know they had agreed to one, but I saw the headline today that they moved it from Saturday now to Friday night, and they're saying it's going to be broadcast in its entirety 7 p.m. Friday.
Yeah, I think it is. It is right. They moved it to prime time. I think it's 7:30 our Central Time, 8:30 Eastern. And it will be, obviously I'll be glued to the TV watching it, and I think it will be one of those things where we will see what we already know, and that's for President Biden's own legacy. It's time for him to move on. Otherwise, he's going to end up going further downhill and losing the election. I would rather be a former past president that flies around, writes a $10 million book, and is respected for making a right decision to step down than be a guy that got trounced in the election. So I hope he makes the right decision and quick. But there's so much flip-flopping. He went to the doctor. No, he didn't go to the doctor. Yeah, Congress, the congressional people are saying it's time to step down. The governors are saying as they meet with him, we're with him. He's in it to win it. There's just so much flip-flop. But when you have that much noise and shaking going on, it's pretty evident what we're going to see.
All right, Dan Snell, tell them how they can find your books, Winsome Candidate and The Winsome Way.
Yeah, thanks. They can go to thewinsomecandidate.com. Winsome is WINSOME, thewinsomecandidate.com. Say hello there. Or they can get the book, either book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever. It's great to be with you. Hey, we live in a great country. Today is still a great day for America. So happy to be with you. And I just wish you and all your listeners the best and stay winsome.
Thanks again, Dan Snell. What does winsome mean?
Winsome is a 1,200-year-old word that means upbeat, cheerful, looks for the good, positive,
all right,
engaging. There we go. All the things that you are, James. You're a winsome guy.
Thank you, Dan Snell. That's your word of the day, winsome. And maybe Dan Snell can fill in as host of Jeopardy sometime with his big old awesome writing vocabulary. But what do you think's going to happen? Like, what's next? Do you think Biden's going to drop out? You think he can be convinced to drop out? 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. He Loves Me Not. What are we playing for bumper music? You're ruining 4th of July, Garrett. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. We will persevere, even through the questionable bumper music there. But welcome to the 4th of July special on the James Show. If you're just joining us, there's one thing that I'm going to be sure to put up on the podcast, and I'll probably even share out a video version if you follow the WBAP Facebook page. And that was my rant in the first hour, proving with beyond the shadow of a doubt, with all the statistics and narrative behind it, on why America is the greatest country. Not just the greatest country right now, greatest country on earth, the greatest country of all time. And it's not even close. Like, it's the race for second place is quite distant. Now, one of the reasons I was reiterating to my guest in the last segment, Dan Snell, I think the real takeaway here from Senility Gate is the poor job the media did. Is, it's nothing new to you that they're biased. It's nothing new to you that they will selectively choose what stories they report and how they report them to necessarily help their narrative. But look at how bad they did on this one. Because I can show you examples of shows that I did, or shows that Rush Limbaugh did, or other people on WBAP did, The Morning Show, Casey Bartholomew, Chris Kroc, all of these guys, Dan Bongino, have been saying for 5 years that this guy's slipping. And now the media's like, I can't believe they tricked us. I can't believe the Biden White House was misleading us this whole time. Oh, no. You weren't misled. You're not that dumb. You're just blaming them because you got busted. And let me show you where this started. Back in 87, when he ran the first time, Joe Biden he wasn't unknown, but he's a senator from Delaware. I mean, it's a tiny state. It has 3 counties. Being a senator from Delaware is not that difficult, compared to being a senator from something like California, New York, or Florida. But This first time on the national stage, people were just knowing him for the first time, and he was spinning a web of lies. He lied about his academic record. He plagiarized a bunch of speeches from JFK and RFK and Neil Kinnock. But the curious one that comes up in modern times is these lies about civil rights. He lied about marching in protest. He lied about being in sit-ins. He lied about going to meetings with civil rights leaders. Turned out he had to admit before the end of the 1987 primary season that he lied about all that. So this is the flashback.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I did not march with a 12-point program. I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes. And we changed attitudes.
When I was 17 years old, like many of you, I participated in sit-ins to desegregate the restaurants and movie houses of Wilmington, Delaware.
You realize none of this happened, right? He never marched because they would say, well, what march you go to? And any march he named, they would go to other people on that march, and no one could say, I remember him being there. What about the sit-ins in Wilmington? You organized all those. Do you remember him being there? No. You know, it would be kind of weird. He's only 17 at the time, but...
I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff. During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement.
Concerned?
I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware.
By the way, this is him admitting the truth.
I was involved. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
So he ran for president again in 2008. You think a good 20 years, water under the bridge, sweep it under the rug, whatever metaphor you want to use with whatever preposition you want to use. It surprised a lot of people, though. It was brought up. I was on Sirius back then. I was on satellite radio, and we brought up a montage very similar to that of all the lies that he did in 87. And when he was running for president in 2008, it didn't come up again. He got to be VP, and then he took 4 years off, and then he's running for president in 2019, and he started telling these lies again. And in my observation, that is when the dementia talk started. That's why I'm playing this, not just to show you that he lied, but that he forgot he lied about it, and then 32 years later, he's telling the same lies as if it hasn't been debunked. And that is the moment where the rest of the media loses credibility. Because those of us who were paying attention in 2019 and 2020 saw that and were like, hang on, these are lies that have been debunked for 20, 30 years now. And he didn't slip once and say, oh, yeah, that was a lie I used to tell. I forgot that had been debunked. He said it over and over and over. He said it like 10 times on the campaign trail. And so Rush Limbaugh and people like me were making montages of it, making fun of him and whatnot. But the rest of the media from that point on, if you are saying Biden is as sharp as a tack or sharp as he ever been, or this version of Biden is the best Biden, you're lying because we have clear evidence. Something is going wrong. His cadence has changed. His facial expressions has changed. He just sits there with his mouth open. He talks slower. He mumbles. He stutters. And when they talk about, well, this is a guy with a stutter. No, he never had a stutter before this. He didn't have mumbling problems before this. He didn't do the very big angry and then get down to a whisper thing as much as he does now. He acts different. And it's right in line with symptoms that a lot of us have gone through with your parents, maybe a spouse, maybe a grandparent, maybe an aunt, maybe a next door neighbor. But this was him in 2019. Over and over and over, same lies.
You know, when I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do.
Never happened.
I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. But I got my education, Reverend Doc, in the black church. Not a joke. Because when we used to get organized on Sundays to go out and desegregate movie theaters and things like that, we do it through the black church. I was no big shakes, Reverend, in the civil rights movement, just a kid. I got involved in desegregated movie theaters and helping, you may remember Reverend Moyer in Delaware and Herman Holloway organized voter registration drives, coming out of black churches on Sunday, figuring how we were going to move. In October, I was invited to the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis to receive the Freedom Award, a thing when I sat in black churches on the east side of Wilmington getting ready to, and by the way, next to two Jewish rabbis,
Sure.
Getting ready to go out and desegregate movie theaters in Delaware. I never, ever thought in my life I would be worthy of, and I'm still not sure I'm worthy of it.
So that is what was said in 2019. Do you see that? That was at like 5 different occasions. He's telling the lies that have been debunked for 32 years at this point. So anyone in the media that acts like, oh, they've got tricked, or the Biden administration was lying to them, or they just found out, or that's not very cool of them to hide it this whole time. They weren't hiding it. You just didn't want to see it. Or you know what? I'm not giving anyone the benefit of the doubt, because if you're so brain dead you didn't see that, you didn't see what the rest of us saw, you probably can't operate a car in order to get to work. You probably have to live in some sort of assisted living facility where they have like padded rooms and stuff. Now, I don't believe you didn't see that. I believe that you were willing to overlook and mislead your audience for political purposes, because that's what was good for the cause. But you are dishonest, media. If you didn't see this, you were dishonest. You're not incompetent. You're not dumb. You lied to us. 800-288-WBAP. 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Happy birthday, America. Walking you through the weirdest election cycle in your lifetime has been an absolute joy on The James Show. My next guest has been enjoying it too, or I think so. Debbie Schlussel, have you been enjoying this election season?
Yes and no. I mean, I just, I have mixed feelings about it. It's painful.
Well, I have noticed a big change in about the last week or so to my right-leaning friends who feel a little more optimistic after the last debate.
Well, I think that they should not be too optimistic, because we don't know really what's going to happen next. And also, don't forget, Americans have a very short attention span. And, the debate was in June. It's now July. The election's in November. Some people, I think, vote as early as, September? So in early voting. I think that debate was a disaster for Biden. Anyone who believes he had a cold or a bad night or whatever is an idiot. We know he is not all there. That was on display. The people who have colds don't talk like he does and basically have their minds run off into the distance unfocused and talk about things that have nothing to do with anything and make no sense. On the other hand, right now, all of the people that they're talking about, if Joe Biden does drop out or is forced out, all the people they're talking about who could replace him, none of them would be Donald Trump. The only one is Michelle Obama. She doesn't want to run. She's having a great life with all the Obama's riches and Netflix deals and their mansion in Martha's Vineyard and all of this stuff. So she's not going to run. So these other choices, everyone says they're losing. Yes, they're losing now, but we don't know what's going to happen once it's November. Things always tighten up once it gets closer to Election Day. And I just don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen because, number one, it depends on, does Joe Biden stay in the race? If he stays in the race, it's going to be terrible for him. And I think if Trump is smart, he's not going to do the second debate in September, because Biden is now desperate to prove that he is actually a lucid individual, which he isn't. And he's going to be desperate to do that debate in September. Trump's already won just by showing up because he came off as a lucid, in-touch individual, and Joe Biden came off as completely the opposite, didn't know what was going on. If they have a new debate and Biden does better because he's on, some kind of drug or something, then, things could change. I don't know. So there are so many variables in this. It's really unpredictable.
We're running into some deadlines here, though. There are a couple of states. I've heard other guests on other shows here on WBAP say that for some of these people who have already gone through their primary or caucus and it's set in stone, the only way they can change who the Democrat nominee will be on their ballots is for an act of the state legislature. I believe Pennsylvania and Michigan are two of them. And you're from Michigan. Do you know anything about that?
I did not know that. I've run for office here twice. The first time I lost by one vote, quote unquote. They really ripped me off, but I was not aware of that. And this is a make or break state. It's one of the main swing states. Either of these candidates has to win. So if they can't change it, but you and I know how it always happens. If Joe Biden were to drop out, all the liberal Democrat lawyers are going to go to federal court. And there have been decisions here before. For example, John Conyers was not on the ballot. He went to federal court. They ruled he had to be on the ballot, and they put him on because he didn't qualify. There was something wrong with his signatures or whatever. They went to federal court. He was put on. There have been many other instances of that, and so I would not be surprised if federal judges let the new person on, if there is a new person. And that's the question because, you've got Hunter Cocaine Biden, I think, taking the lead from what I've read, along with Jill trying to boss all the Democrat people away from this idea that he needs to be replaced. But I think they'd be stupid to listen to the Bidens. I mean, Jill Biden saying, oh, my God, you got a participation trophy. You answered all the questions. You got them all wrong, but you answered all the questions at the debate. You didn't know what you were talking about. You thought you were in another country in another decade, but you won. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to help them.
Yeah, the strongest argument I hear from them is that Donald Trump lies. It's like, really, that's all you got? The other guy's a liar? Yeah, you did portable, you were drooling, you forgot all kinds of stuff, and you misspoke, and you said trillionaires and confused countries and people and dates and times, but the other guy lied a whole lot. And I really feel like lying in the political arena is a lot like blaming the refs in the sports arena. It's that this is the lament of losers.
Right. It's the lament of losers, and name me a politician that has never lied. I'd like to meet that person. That's politics. That happens every second in politics. But the one thing I found interesting is that right after the debate, I think like the day or two after they did polls, and Biden didn't go down in the polls much, Trump didn't go up much. It was only 1.5 to 2 points. But now that it's been several days, we're now on a week. They've done polls, and now Trump is up 5 or 6 points, depending on the poll. Now, that is still within the margin of error, as the liberal media is now suddenly reminding me about. And it is. That's true. And like I said, anything can change in several months. Americans have short memories and short attention spans. So, I mean, I still think no matter who's on the ballot, even Biden, I think it's going to be close. And I think they'd be nuts not to replace him. I think they have to. The problem is, who could they pick? Who could win? America is so familiar with both these candidates that it's too late to change, I believe, even if they could change with all these problems with those two states you mentioned. I think with Michigan and Pennsylvania, I think, Americans have to become comfortable and familiar with somebody, and anybody they put in now, nobody knows them. And the ones we know the most are not for good reasons. Gavin Newsom probably is the most well-known governor in America. And that's because he destroyed businesses. He destroyed lives, not only with the COVID stuff, but with his taxes, with his policies with the homeless, all his friends who he endorsed to be prosecutors, who are all these Soros prosecutors that don't go after anyone. And now when you go to Walgreens or anywhere else, if they're still in existence in your area because they didn't shut their doors, you have to wait for an attendant to come unlock everything you want, and it takes forever. This is life now in California, and so nobody's going to want to vote for him who knows better. And then you've got my governor, Gretchen Whitmer. She also destroyed lives and businesses here during the whole COVID thing. And she also went and did Botox treatments right before she shut everybody down. Her husband got special treatment during the shutdown to take out his boat when other people couldn't. They went to a restaurant without masks, just like Gavin Newsom did, while lecturing the rest of us and killing businesses and lives. And so she's not, once, all the opposition research commercials come out against her, that's not going to work. I hear a lot of people saying, they have to stick with Kamala as the choice if Biden pulls out. But Kamala Harris is hated just like Hillary Clinton, and for good reason. They both cackled. They're both useless. They're both far left. They've both never done anything. They're not really qualified. And both of them would be a disaster for America in every single aspect. And she's not well liked at all, Kamala. And, I mean, there's this great video that I posted on X/Twitter today or last night of her at some event where she's dancing with these kids.
The high school band kids?
Yeah, it's just so annoying. It could just be a Trump commercial. Just a 30-second or even 10-second ad. This is the woman that's a heartbeat away from the presidency if Joe stays on the ticket. Or this is the woman that could be your president, or do you want Trump? And I just think those kinds of things that she does, and the cackle when she can never answer any questions, she's just a lightweight. I don't see how she could be the nominee, but if they don't have her as the nominee, if Biden pulls out, then a lot of Black Americans are going to be very angry because they're going to say...
Well, and the pink cat crowd, too, because this breaks two rules, that they're a female and a non-white, so the identity... People have two things to complain about. We'll continue with Debbie Schlussel after the break because I'm going to ask her about what two prominent Democrats have said this week, that they expect an open convention. The Democrat National Convention is happening in August. I'm going to ask Debbie Schlussel about the specter of an open convention next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. That's what he sounds like, and you know it. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Not only do I do a good Eddie Vedder, I also have Debbie Schlussel staying with us for another segment. Debbie, your thoughts on the possibility, the specter of an open convention at the Democrat National Convention that's going to be held in August. You think that's going to happen?
So I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. They're actually picking the nominee on August 5th via a roll call, electronic, online vote.
What? Where'd you see that? Is that how they normally do it, or is this something new?
No.
I thought it was chosen at the convention.
Normally it is. So
okay.
This is in today's Washington Post, and they said that normally it is at the convention. It's scheduled for August 5th. And the convention starts on August 19th. They said the reason they scheduled it early was Ohio had some kind of law or something where something had to be done by then. I think they had to pick the nominee by then, something like that. Now,
they have to send them out to the printer in order for it to come back in time for their absentee ballots or whatever, right? That's
right.
They're the first one with the printer deadline, is what I've read.
Yeah, and so, but Ohio has changed that, and so they actually could cancel the electronic roll call vote on August 5th and do it at the convention, but they haven't changed that. So that's what the Democrats are going to do. So I believe that Joe Biden would have to drop out or pledge his delegates to somebody else in order to do that. I think that he and Jillian Hunter are kicking and screaming, dragging their, feet, trying not to drop out. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that works. And, when you have an open convention where there's no nominee, when you have a contested convention where there may be a nominee, but it's contested, or a brokered convention where, votes are brokered to pick the nominee. When you're in person, I think the horse trading can be done much more easily. When you're all over the country, you're on the phone, you're online, and so on, it's different. And they would have to do this before August 5th. Now, I heard all this stuff on various media outlets that the delegates are bound legally by the Democrat rules to vote for Biden if they're chosen for Biden. That's not true, at least according to the Washington Post article. The Washington Post cited the Democrat National Committee rules, which said that you should vote your conscience, and you probably should vote for who you're elected to vote for, but you don't have to. And the Washington Post talked to several delegates. They said that they talked to 36 delegates. Most of them are going to vote for Biden because they say that's what they were elected to do, and so on. But there are a few people with reservations. I believe if there was a second debate in July or early August, then I think probably Joe Biden would be finished, and unless he was on mega super Adderall and other stuff. And I think they would broker something for that August 5th roll call, or they would change that date or something. But that's not going to happen. And I think, while debates, usually people forget presidential debates a day or two later, it's over and nobody's talking about it.
Not this one.
Now more than a week. Yeah. And I mean, it happened almost a week ago tonight. And people are still talking about it. But I think eventually they're going to forget. People have very short memories, unfortunately.
They want to forget, just like they wanted to not believe for the last 5 years the clear signs that Home Skillet was in some sort of mental decline. It's very convenient, their memory, their selective memory. I just don't see how they can do that, Debbie, because if you skip over, if you kick Biden out and you go with Kamala Harris, you lose. But if you skip over Kamala Harris, you're going to have a legit complaint against the people who are so concerned about race and the people who are so concerned about gender. Look, and they're not going to turn around and vote for Trump, but they're going to be less enthusiastic about showing up, and that could be enough to affect them. Mm-hmm. On top of that, you're going to be throwing out the primary/caucus results of all 50 states at the same time you're saying we got to do this to protect democracy, and that's the opposite. So even though we know the media is going to be on their side and they're not going to get the real amount of criticism, just some dampening of enthusiasm on those grounds would be really hard for them to make up in an election that's already so close. I don't see how they do it.
I don't either. I don't see how they do it. I don't think they can beat Trump. I just don't think there's anybody else who could beat Trump. And I don't think at this point Biden would beat Trump. So I really think I still think it's going to be very close. I do think people have short memories. I think a lot of people are uninformed. I got a neighbor. I was shocked last night. I was coming home, and he votes in every election. I've seen him with that I vote sticker on. And he said, I said, Happy Independence Day. He said, I don't know what that means. And I said, what do you mean? July 4th, freedom, independence. He said, what's that about? Is it related to the Civil War? And I said, are you serious? America became an independent country July 4th, 1776. Sound familiar? And he said, no, I left high school as soon as I found out I could get a GED and start a job. And I don't know about that stuff. I only know the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln. So these are the people who are voting. I used to think those people didn't vote. Unfortunately, now they are.
All right. It's America's birthday, July 4th. We were just taking a poll earlier. I'd like to get your input. America, greatest country ever?
Greatest country ever, but getting a bit tarnished, and it's very sad. I believe, we're 2 years away from the semi-quincentennial. I think that's what it's called, 250 years. Will this country last till 300 years? Maybe, but it doesn't look good, and it probably will be around, but it'll probably be very different. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm an optimist, and I hope I'm wrong, but things are bad. I think government keeps getting bigger, regulations, taxes, the ability to use the free market to get where you want to go because the market isn't so free anymore. All the wokeness, all this stuff, it's a tremendous tarnish on America, unfortunately.
Go find her on Twitter/X and all social media. Your X feed is a horror show right now. I mean that in kind of a good way, but go find her online. It's a fun follow. Debbie Schlussel, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
I mean horror show in a good way. 800-288-WBAP if you want to get in on the conversation. Coming up next, Donald Kimball from Young Voices on the 4th of July special for the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, happy birthday, America, and welcome to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, the election season continues to stumble and bumble along, and the same questions that we're asking today, man, I don't think we're any closer to having answers for them than when we started asking them after the debate on Thursday. Is this guy really going to be the candidate? And if not him, who? How are they going to do it? When are they going to do it? How are they going to do it without making certain constituencies mad? Man, I don't know. Let's ask my next guest, Donald Kimball. He's a commentator with Young Voices. Donald Kimball, let me ask you, do you think Joe Biden is going to be their nominee on November 5th?
Well, it's, like you said, very tough to say. I think that it is probably right now about a 50-50 shot because it seems like there's a lot of positioning going out with lesser known lawmakers now sort of floating the idea of replacing him from within his own party, just almost to gauge what America's reaction to that idea is. You also are going to see continued renewed efforts to say, no, Biden will be the nominee from prominent speakers such as Barack Obama or Nancy Pelosi. Obviously, they're trying to deflect and flip the script on Trump right now. So there seems to be messaging. My inclination, though, is that if they do seek to replace Biden, it will be done only in such a way where he retires now and Kamala is sworn in before. I think that she seems like the likely next step, personally.
Andrew Yang is predicting open convention for the Democrats in August. The likelihood of that?
I don't think that's the case. It's hard to say. Anything could happen. But my inclination is that, in order for them to make the argument that there should be a new nominee for, the next term, they have to somehow navigate the idea that Biden should still serve out his remaining term. And so with the positioning of Hunter Biden's indictment and with all of these calls on his fitness to serve in general from the media, it seems more likely that if they're going to swap someone out, it would be less of, we're going to let Biden finish out his term and have an open convention, and more, we're going to have him resign, say he wants to spend time with his son and family before some sort of conviction goes through, and then swear in Kamala so that America kind of gets normalized with the idea of a President Harris. I think that one of the mistakes from the Clinton campaign was saying, imagine Trump in the office, imagine. And then people did and normalized it, and they might try to do the similar tact with the vice president.
Yeah, and look, my predictions have been terrible this time around, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think the Democrat National Convention happen in the second week of August. I think that's way too late. I think they have to figure this out in the next week or two, or they can't solidify a candidacy in 2.5 months and get people excited and mobilized and out there. Or I don't think they can. I don't know. I just think that the convention is too late and they have to settle it soon.
I'm inclined to agree with you. There's a couple of things to take in mind. The first is that people tend not to like upheaval. They like consistency and they like what is expected for people who aren't as politically engaged. And so if they are going to get rid of Biden, it needs to be done quickly so that people have time to normalize to expect. But even still, that's why I tend to think that it will be Harris versus an open convention and some other names, even though there are people floating out names like Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer. You have to remember that when candidates are floated out in the abstract, they can seem like they're popular and they'll be great candidates. But then you look over at the Republican side and, Ron DeSantis was supposed to be the contender, and his campaign kind of fizzled out. And this happens, all the time with different candidates. So the consistency of seeing someone that you're familiar with and that you like, I think that's the strongest asset Biden and Harris, incidentally, both have. And remember that this election, it is also two highly unpopular candidates. So Biden, seemingly being unfit for office may be less of a deterrent than people think, because people who are voting for Biden often aren't voting for Biden in so much as they're voting against Trump and vice versa.
Well, it's going to be a big old mess. Donald Kimball, what are y'all doing over at Young Voices this election season?
Well, we're going to have all kinds of reporting out, all kinds of analysis from policy issues to current events. So make sure to check out Young Voices. They're a great org. I've been thrilled to be with them for as long as I have.
Well, I appreciate your confidence in these predictions, because I've done such a bad job. I've almost stopped making predictions. And when I do, I really soft pedal. I'm like, I think this might be what's going to happen, because this is far beyond what I've seen. I mean, I've been doing talk radio. Next month will be 22 years, and there are so many firsts on this. I kind of enjoy it. I kind of like not having the same old thing and not knowing what to expect the next day and if the guy's going to make it through the debate or whatnot. This has been a fun one, Donald.
Yes, well, I will say predictions always come back to bite you, so it's definitely a very wise thing to hedge your bets and not to say this is definitely going to happen. And to be clear, I think that when we talk about likelihoods of these predictions, there might be a majority chance, but that does leave the other paths open. So we could see something totally chaotic, unexpected, and I'm definitely willing for that possibility to be true. And I agree, especially with people of my age who have grown up sort of seeing all of these elections roll out in seemingly greater hysterics and greater, I don't know, fireworks, to reference Independence Day today. It is entertaining, and if that's the best we can take from it, well, at least we can sit back and enjoy the memes.
Well, I feel like the big lesson from this election season is whatever you think of the media, it should probably be lower. Like these guys that are coming out and saying, I can't believe we were tricked. You weren't tricked. You were lying. You knew damn well he was this daffy the whole time. You've just been exposed. So don't act like this was like a one-off bad performance, or he just had a bad night, or is this some sort of anomaly, or the White House really pulled the wool over your eyes. No, the media was willingly going along with this, even though they saw all the dementia signs that the rest of us saw.
I think that's exactly the right way to put it, because in the best case scenario, they weren't asking these questions. So, most likely they saw, as everyone else did, and knew that this was the case. But the worst possible, or the best possible case for them, is that they were so inept at their jobs that they weren't asking the basic questions on these kinds of observations, like, wow, he doesn't seem like he's, fit to serve in this capacity from, any hours outside of like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. per se.
Well, look, I don't know how much longer we have before the entirety of the American public is now as anti-media as you and I, because they didn't just miss the boat on Biden's mental decline. They weren't asking the important questions or doing the important investigative journalism behind the lab leak or the masks or the lockdowns or vaccines or even Jussie Smollett. They carried that water for an entire month, as ridiculous as it sounded. So whatever you think of the media, you should probably turn it down a good peg or two, because I promise you still think of them too high. They are even lower than you previously thought. I mean, everything, Hunter's laptop, net neutrality, global warming, cheap fakes is just the latest.
Yeah, you're completely right. And I think that the media writ large is actually nervous of this awakening from the people, again, who are not as engaged, that are starting to see behind the curtain. Because you'll notice that the debate that was aired, a couple weeks just back, they allowed multi-streaming on other network television partners that should be their competitors, but they did not allow independent media sources online, things like Joe Rogan or Timcast or any sort of online platforms, these alternate media sources that have been getting these stories at least closer to the truth, if not perfectly. And so those things shouldn't be in their wheelhouse of competition, but they're realizing that people are turning away from corporate media nonsense and tuning into individual journalists who are actually asking the questions, which is why they were trying to bar them from showing the debate rather than what should ostensibly be their real competition in other cable network television shows.
All right, that's Donald Kimball, Young Voices. Thanks again for being on the James Show. And remember, they lied about all that stuff in the past, whether it's coronavirus or the Russian collusion or Obamacare keeping your doctor or cheap fakes or Hunter's laptop. That means they're lying about all this stuff in the future. You are not going to like eating bugs. You do not like paper straws. You are not going to like riding dart. You're not going to like all these other things. You don't like electric cars, do you? 800-288-WBAP. This is the James Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.